Where does faith begin? Where does salvation begin? Where does the work of the church begin? The early church gathered in Jerusalem because they were all in a kerfuffle about what to do with these darn Gentiles. I don't know whose cockamamie idea it was to invite them into salvation to begin with. Seems like Paul was at the heart of it. I suppose Jesus, all the way from the very beginning of his ministry, was truly at the heart of it. This radical kind of love that he envisioned, this radical kind of love that God has for all God's people. But they were all in an argument about what to do with these Gentiles. Do they need to be circumcised like the rest of us? And then they finally got talking. And there was Peter, who was circumcised from the beginning, just a fisherman, not a scholar of the law, but certainly a good Jew. He obviously followed all the prescriptions. And he turned his back on Jesus. Said he didn't even know him. Said 3 times he didn't even know him. Didn't want to have anything to do with him in his darkest hour. And didn't Jesus rush to Peter and say, Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Peter, in the midst of his sorrow, in the midst of his guilt, experienced the great mercy of the risen Jesus. And then there was St. Paul, another good Jew, circumcised for sure. He was a scholar of the law. He knew exactly what the law prescribed. And he was in the midst of persecuting the early church when Jesus appeared to him and called him in the midst of his sin. Didn't even wait for him to change his heart. It was the experience of God's mercy and love that changed his heart. And they both knew that. And so it was from that point of mercy, that point of forgiveness, that they could say, what makes them different than us? How is God's mercy for them different than God's mercy for us? Are we saved by circumcision? Are we saved by following every little letter of the law? Or are we saved according to his design? Are we saved by the gracious mercy of his life for us and his life now in us? It wasn't following the law that led to salvation. It was mercy that led to a desire to follow the law of love. But it all starts from a place of mercy. And sometimes we don't get that. Sometimes we let our judgment get in the way. Sometimes we let all kinds of prescriptions get in the way, and we forget to start with mercy and forgiveness. That's where the work of the church begins. That's where salvation begins. We're in this place, this terrible place of division in our nation, in our neighborhoods, in our church, because we're starting from the wrong place. We need to start from the place of our own brokenness. We need to start from the place of our own need for God's mercy. And then we need to extend that same mercy to others.